Hello everyone, Jack and Tom here from Cultaholic back once again. This time we're going to be discussing the recently released PWI Tag Team 100. You were saying it's the first year it's been a 100.
They always do a 50. We've added another 50 odd.
Fair enough.
Exactly 50.
Well, basically the aim of this little video is we're going to run through the top 10, talk about the merits of each one a little bit and whether we think maybe they should be higher or lower, whether they deserve it. But also, Tom, I believe before we get in the top 10, you've got a few honourable mentions.
Absolutely. What I will say is do purchase PWI's Tag Team 100. Obviously, you'll see throughout the day lists appearing on social media accounts and stuff like that. But there's a phenomenal group of writers who put this list together and get together, and we should be supporting that sort of thing. So do buy the PWI, whether in physical or digital form.
We've had a look at it. It's a really nicely designed one. It's all video game themed this year. Yeah, it's really good.
A lot of good people work on it and write it, so do support that. But I look through like 100 to 10.
Okay.
And I've got a few honourable mentions. As you said, these are some of your favourites, aren't they? I went, yes.
Fair enough. I mean,
I always want to give some love to the one at the end of the list that starts the dream. Duke Drosy got a job in WWF because he was number 500 in the PWI the one time.
Fair enough.
Because Vince went, I'll make number 500 of the PWI a star, pal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That was Duke Drosy. So congrats to Bougie Reality, Maddie Rakowski and Rashay Chanel, who we saw on AEW a while ago. They are the Mission Pro Tag Champs. They have been since May. Really fun act. Like those two bounce off each other really well. We don't see them wrestle, at least for Mission Pro as often as we should, but they're really good and they creep in there at 100. Some comeback kids this year in the tag world, the Bollywood Boys, who took some time away after being let go from WWE. They're in there in 95. The Spanish announce team, the SAT, the Maximo Boys. They've had a bit of a resurgence. They're at 92.
They're from like the 2000s.
Yeah, and not much has changed, but we live underwater. The Motor City Machine Guns having another run in Impact right now.
Yeah.
And you go back to those days in TNA where they just lit it up.
They're fantastic, man.
Phenomenal. And they've still got it. Clap, 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 clap. So look out for some great comeback kids in this year's countdown. Some love to the 0121 at 45. That's Dan Maloney and Man Like Darice, who have been doing their thing in Progress Wrestling, former Progress Tag Team Champions. Big fan of Dan Maloney. I love what Man Like Darice is all about. I wanted to mention them because whilst I do believe Maloney and Darice do deserve to be within the top 50, I kind of think that there's another tag team that Man Like Darice is in that doesn't get enough love.
Who's that?
And that's with Leon Slater as Boisterous Behavior. They are the North Wrestling Tag Team Champions, and I think everybody is recognizing that actually these guys are phenomenal together.
Yes, indeed.
And they've had a brilliant year in the North Wrestling at least, and in other places people are starting to discover them. Leon Slater's just doing more stuff in GCW next year, I think, after he made his debut there. He's going to be one to watch, as is Man Like Darice. Some love to Bussy. Get it in there. Not many intergender teams amongst the 100.
No.
But I believe they rank highest, or not one of the highest. This is Effie and Ali Catch. That's formerly Ali Cat.
Now she's all about violence.
Yeah, and it works. It works. They became GCW Tag Champs this year. They beat the Briscoes. They turned back challenges from like Delirious and Either Surreal. The Second Gear Crew, the Rejects, they've had a really good year as well, have Bussy. Sunshine Machine, we talk about teams from the UK. Chuck Mambo and TK Cooper. This is sort of the latest version of them. They've been running together for a while, but I think they're now doing some of their best work as a tag team. You can see them in Progress Wrestling and up and down the country as well. I want to give a nod to the Acclaimed. It's a really obvious one, but they're in there at 20.
You could have argued they could have cracked the top 10, certainly.
I certainly think so, because the AEW does get a lot of grief about sort of bringing in talent, ready talent from other promotions and running with them. But the Acclaimed are a brilliant example of what AEW creative can do to create stars within house. Yeah. Because they were born in AEW. Yeah. And they're undeniable stars in AEW. As you say, it could have been the top 10. They're one of AEW's biggest star-making creations, but also I think we're not suggesting... Basically what I'm saying is tons of credit has to be given to the two guys in the tag team itself. My God. They've made themselves very much. Overwhelmingly so. Yes. Like Bowens and they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Number 20 is nothing to be sniffed at, but it could have been top 10. I do believe... I think they could have been. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. We'll have a look, obviously, in a second at the top 10. Now, Naomi and Sasha Banks at 19. One. Yeah, because obviously Naomi and Banks haven't really been on the scene. No. For much of the year in which they are judged for PWI. Yeah. But they did enough good work in the time they were there to establish themselves this high up the list, I think.
I don't think.
No?
But fair enough. I think that they could have done more to change wrestling by walking out, oddly enough, than what they did in matches actually this year. I don't think that perhaps 19 is a place on this list purely because of what they've done in the ring. Basically what I'm saying is that if they hadn't walked out and caused a big stir, I don't think they'd be this high on this list. That might sound brutal, but I think maybe... I'm not saying that. I'm a huge fan of both, obviously.
Yeah, I'm sad it's gone the way that it has and we haven't seen much
I would love to see them back, wherever they decide to go.
And like, again, like with the acclaimed, like Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, who have done some great stuff this year, falling just below them.
I know. It's always... Hey, debate's fun. Debate is fun.
Is
Do
fun.
it in the comment below.
14, I'll give a nod to Toxic Attraction.
Oh, yes.
Mandy Rose, Gigi Dolan, JC Jane. They're proof that this is what the NXT system has to be, which is creating oven-ready stars for Raw and SmackDown.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they are sort of the feature attraction, our Toxic Attraction, for a Raw or SmackDown after WrestleMania, where they get that call up. It seems obvious.
They're in a tried and tested role that booking in wrestling promotions often fits, that bookers seem to love, which is the kind of the heel tag team who are like little stable who you can't quite get around and they always crop up, and they fulfill that role really well. Mandy as a solo star has had a bit of a resurgence in the past year or two, and they've really helped her with that. And I think they could arguably maybe have cracked it as well. Maybe I think they're probably in a fair position here.
I'm not arguing the position for them too much. I mean, there could be a lot said for Aussie Open.
They could have cracked the top 10.
So they're in there at 11. They just miss out on the top 10. They've probably had the most exposure of their careers in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And I think the world is now cottoning on to how phenomenal these guys out of ours are. I mean, they're brilliant.
Weirdly, despite being called Aussie Open and being a tag team from Australia, it's actually the UK scene who I think's learned how good they are in the past few years. They were incredible in that period just before NXT UK kind of changed the scene a lot in the UK, but they were arguably the best tag team in the UK for 2 or 3 years before that, and look to be reaching that level again.
Seek out their match with FTR from Royal Quest
in New Japan,
and I do hope to see them doing more stuff next year, possibly with AEW. I feel like they'd be a stronger fit for AEW than anywhere else.
Yeah, quite possibly.
But I think they could really lean into, because obviously AEW, when it's doing the right thing, it's kind of leaning more into sort of those high match quality episodes.
Their in-ring style fits that really well.
And it really, really does. So those are just a couple. Like I said, go buy the magazine and discuss with people about who you think should have hit that 100 list. But more importantly, it's about the top 10.
Absolutely, it is about the top 10. Now, before we dive into the top 10, there is an evaluation period. So if you're thinking, why didn't they mention that excellent match from just the other week? The evaluation period for this top 100 is from between October 2022 and September this year, the end of September, I believe. So we won't be talking about things that have just happened at Survivor Series, for example, because it doesn't fall within the parameters the PWI have set.
And in terms of the parameters that they do use, like we said in the earlier news video today, it's a bit kayfabe, it's a mixture. Not, isn't it? Because they base it on sort of skill and ability, but also on sort of impact within a promotion.
Yeah.
And
storyline achievements.
Yeah.
Title wins.
Competitors as well. Like challengers is also another remit that they're judged on as well. Like, has the quality of opponents been as good as they are?
As we dive into this top 10, we will see that I reckon they've weighted title wins quite highly here, because as we'll see, we'll start with number 10, which is an indie tag team from North America, Violence is Forever. That's Dominic Garrini and Kevin Koo. I've written here they are US indie standouts. They've held titles in various promotions across America over the past year, including C4, Black Label Pro, and Action Wrestling. They were an MLW tag team, which is where you may have heard of them most likely, I guess. But unfortunately, they did have to leave in January, which is sad, but it could signify a broadening of their horizons, because they've recently made their debuts in Progress in England and in WXW in Germany as well. So the world could well be their oyster, these boys.
I'm quite excited for what 2023 holds for Violence is Forever. I feel like they've had that one appearance on Dark Elevation. Again, like Aussie Open, a team that I feel like in its current form fits that AEW remit quite well.
I have to be honest, I wasn't aware of their Dark Elevation appearance, so I went back and found it just before. And unfortunately, they were kind of hidden in it was like a 5-on-5.
Yeah.
They were just two of the guys on the team that lost. And it's like, if Tony Khan wanted to give these guys a spotlight, I reckon that they definitely wouldn't let him down. They are really good. Just in terms of notability and I guess impact on the wider wrestling world, you could argue they're a bit high here because they're probably the least well known of all the teams on this list, maybe. But at the same time, I don't think you can deny, as you were saying, their in-ring quality, I suppose. I don't know.
Maybe. We'll see what they do. Like I said, I think they could do good things next year.
So look out for them in the future. They could be ones to watch. Number 9 is, well, two people who are like kind of stalwarts of the North American independent scene. Wrestlers who've been around for a long time. They know the ropes. The Hex, Allysin Kay and Marty Bell. Tom, the first NWA Women's Tag Team Champions since the 80s.
The holders of the Burks.
Wow.
The Burke.
Wow.
The Mildred Burke Honor Tag Team titles. I love their work. Like Allysin Kay, as a singles wrestler within NWA, always was a standout. And I think the way that she's mixed it up is by getting Marty Bell on side. These two have such a beautiful energy together. And I like, whilst we have seen them all over the indie scene, as part of NWA and Shine and Eve. I want to see them more.
Yeah, me too.
I want to see them more.
I enjoy that they've done really well this past year and they've ranked in the top 10 because I've thought of them both as like primarily single stars, but they've come together and I think that it's really rejuvenated their careers a little bit as well. So that's pretty good because I'm more familiar of the two probably with Allysin Kay, and I think she was doing stuff in Impact, doing stuff over here, doing stuff over there, but now it's like teaming with Marty Bell has given them both more of a focus and more success as well.
Really, really happy with them. I'm sure it's called the Burke, the tag titles. I might be wrong.
Ones.
I might be thinking of the women's world title that's called the Burke, but either way,
it'll make sense.
It's based on Mildred Burke, and
we
did a whole documentary on that a while ago. It's very good. It's on the podcast feed.
Very good stuff. They also won the tag titles in promotions such as Shine and even Eve, which I wasn't aware of. They came over here and won the tag belts. There's
a lot of love for them at Eve. Like Eve are really good at recognising that talent from the States and bringing them over for their shows down south in London. So they're a nice fit for Eve.
Good stuff. Number 8, a team that you almost certainly will be familiar with. It's the Young Bucks.
Never heard of them.
It's been an up. I think that the Young Bucks are one of those teams where wherever they placed on this list, it would cause debate and discussion. The Young Bucks have had a really up and down year, I think it's fair to say. On one hand, they became the first ever 2-time AEW Tag Team Champions. On the other hand, they dropped them to Swerve in Our Glory after quite a short reign. Also, they became the inaugural Trios Champions alongside Kenny Omega. On the other hand, everything kicked off.
all the stuff that happened.
They got stripped of those belts and suspended for a bit. They're back now, but as I mentioned with the evaluation period, we can't really take their matches, which have been great so far, with Death Triangle into account because that'll be for next year.
They're such a divisive team because of sort of the way they are perceived, the way they carry themselves, and the way in which they do wrestle. Not one for a lot of purists is the kind of vibe that I get. But if you kind of take away that sort of pure element of wrestling and just sort of for what it is, it's an exciting style they wrestle. But you know, there's a lot of people that will argue that they'll remain divisive in 2023.
Oh, they will.
Do you see them winning the tag titles back, or do you think now they're staying as far away from FTR as possible and staying in the trios?
I'm biased because I'm a huge FTR fan, so I'm always going to kind of take their side over the Bucks. But it very much seems as though they are more committed now to the trios division, shall we say? And I reckon they'll probably win that best of 7 series and hold those belts for a long time. Fair enough. I
think that's more than fair. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the Young Bucks. You know what? Before we move on, I really enjoy when they're flipping all around all over the place and everything. But with the Bucks, their matches that I enjoy the most are the ones where they slow it down a bit and have storyline heavy matches with the likes of Omega and Hangman or Omega and Ibushi. They're some of the Bucks' best matches in my opinion.
When they pair it back, they're still very good. And
slow
sometimes
it down. Damn kids, grab a hole.
Just grab a hole and slow. I think they're going to have to be one of those teams that I think in order for people to really sort of grasp onto them once more, they're going to have to forever pare back what they are.
Right.
And forever have to pull back because we know what they do when they go 100 miles an hour. They'll forever have to pare back, I think.
On the other hand, they did have that amazing cage match with the Lucha Bros, which was many people's match of last year. So, they can't win really, the Bucks. Bucks. Number 7, maybe a curious one in some people's minds. It's Anderson and Gallows. It's the OC. It's the Good Brothers. Brother.
I'm not sure about this because there's so many teams that are sort of circling the top 10,
right.
Like you got the Aussie Open and the like, and the Acclaimed.
The Acclaimed, definitely.
And OC are in the top 10.
I know, it's an odd one. This is where I think possibly titles factor in quite a lot to PWI's judgment here, because they started the evaluation period as Impact Tag Team Champions, lost those belts, but then won them back, beating the Briscoes, which is kind of, given the year the Briscoes had, it's kind of a big deal beating the Briscoes for the titles, I suppose. Then they lost them again to Honor No More before going back to New Japan for a little bit. And as we know now, they've re-signed with WWE, but they haven't had much time within this evaluation period to do a lot in WWE. But in the midst of all this, as a solo star, Carl Anderson obviously won the Never Openweight Championship from Tama Tonga over in New Japan, and that's led to this whole weird, messy, worky shoot situation between WWE and New Japan. I don't know how much importance we place on that though, because that's singles action.
Yeah, so I don't think that has any bearing, to be honest with you, because I'm sort of basing it on the one thing you could potentially say is one of the big driving forces behind how they vote is sort of impact on the sport, on the promotion. So you could argue that Gallows and Anderson, for that reason, because they're sort of walking this line that hasn't been walked for so long between WWE and New Japan.
The forbidden line.
The forbidden line, which is near the forbidden door, I guess.
Around the corner.
It's around the corner from the forbidden door.
Yeah.
Then maybe you could argue that whilst the in-ring quality hasn't been as high as a team like an Aussie Open, or like, or hasn't had the popularity like the Acclaimed have, you could certainly say that there is a cultural significance, wrestling-wise, to them being placed so high. And who knows, that might be something that continues even further into 2023.
That makes sense. That could well be one of the categories that worked in their favor here with PWI. Although I'd suggest they are maybe a team that a lot of people are going to disagree with how high they've placed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversation.
With people like the Acclaim missing out on the top 10. Number 6. I first saw this name and I was like, really? And then I thought about it more and I thought, top 10, yeah. RK Bro, Matt Riddle and Randy Orton. I've said here they've had a bit of a ropey start with the oddball tag team kind of thing, and people weren't quite enjoying Riddle at the time, but this helped both of them out massively.
It's really built as a team, although I feel like every time I watch them, I'm waiting for that RKO onto Riddle. That's kind of how it's always been. But I've loved how they've grown together as an oddball team. In a weird way, it's reminded me of Sheamus and Cesaro from many years before. How they were like a weird, this is an odd decision to put these two together, but then all of a sudden, they're like plasticine and they come together, and it's like, oh wow, these are guys incredible. And I think it's given Randy Orton new energy to be around Matt Riddle.
He's openly said it's some of the best fun he's had in his whole career.
Yeah. And I think for Matt Riddle, it's great to be around a guy like Randy Orton, who is somebody that will happily teach him some of the tricks of the trade.
Now, I've mentioned here, of course, that they were one of the highlights of Raw over the past year until Orton's injury has put him out of action, unfortunately, because if they'd carried on for the last few months of this evaluation period, I could see them being even higher than number 6 on this
I think
list.
they'd have broken up by now.
They were awesome. That's a good point. That's a very good point. They beat the Usos at Survivor Series 2021, a rare loss for Jimmy and Jay. They also lost the Raw tag belts to Alpha Academy and then won them back, which was an excellent little feud. They also opened night 2 of WrestleMania in a triple threat tag team match where they retained the belts in a big crowd popping opening to the show.
Yeah, not a wildly strong match, but a fun way to kick off night 2.
Absolutely, yes.
So it's nice to see. You can tell Orton's having fun with it.
Absolutely. I think 6 is a worthy position here for them.
I think, because again, if we're looking across the broader scale of things, I think people have really bit on them as a team as well, pun intended, because of Snake. I think people have bit on them as a team. I'm still waiting for the heels. And I will do forever.
Moving on now to the Japanese wrestling scene, to Stardom, often thought of as the biggest and arguably best Joshi promotion in the world. Stardom's primary tag team this year, their most dominant tag team, has been FWC, the team of Hazuki and Kaguma, a team which, doing a bit of research for this, I learned may not have even existed in the first place, because both of these women had been retired, came back to Stardom, came back to wrestling, and decided to form what became an amazing tag team. So it could almost have not even happened in the first place.
And what's amazing is to watch them come back from retirement and work together. They've just added to the legacy. so well. Like to watch them work. If you're not familiar with Stardom, if you're not familiar with that side of things, get familiar with it, because you will find some liquid wrestling, to quote Ross, from FWC in particular.
Stardom has had an amazing year in terms of the top level main event singles scene, and that's fair enough. But when you look at the undercard as well, when you've got a tag team like FWC, it's really been incredible. They hit the ground running when they came back from retirement. Towards the end of 2021, they won the Goddesses of Stardom Tag League and also ended the tag team reign of Syuri and Julia, which is kind of the story of, I guess, a tag team versus two single stars, and the tag team won out. But Syuri and Julia are higher on the totem pole than FWC. But they managed to beat them, and I think that's a nice story because it shows that a proper tag team can beat two bigger.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say I'm glad that the win went that way, because the idea is, I hate when any promotion outside of Stardom anywhere where they just go two singles wrestlers better than a tag team. Well, no, a tag team should have immediately the seesaw swinging in their favor.
Although, however, I should point out, by the way, that before any Stardom fans tell me I'm wrong, Syuri and Julia did have about a 9-month tag title reign before that. So even though primarily they were solo stars, they had forged an alliance between them.
Exactly.
But FWC proved that they were the better tag team of the two. But they had only been a tag team for about a year, but they've really made the most of it. They've had matches against most of Stardom's other big tag teams in that time, including a particularly great feud with Momo Watanabe and Starlight Kid. And if you know what those two wrestle like, the action was incredibly fast and furious. Check out those matches.
2023 is going to be great, because with the women's, with the PWI, the women's 150, I had a chat with Kristen Ashley, who's one of the writers and one of the contributors with that, and they've seen more Stardom names entering that list than ever as the world sort of starts to wake up more to Stardom.
They've had a belter, It's
amazing. And the fact that we now have an IWGP Women's Champion.
Yes.
And the fact that there's going to be even more exposure coming via Wrestle Kingdom next year.
Yes.
I think there's going to be suddenly a lot of new names on that list as everybody goes, well, they're amazing.
It's kind of on a smaller scale, obviously, but it's kind of similar to when the Western world woke up to New Japan. And it seems like something similar could be happening with Stardom. So definitely something to keep an eye on there, especially the tag team of FWC. Next up, number 4, not a tag team, but a trio.
I like that trios are in this. I think that's the way it's got to go.
It's Death Triangle, Tom. Do you think they are worthy of number 4 on this list?
Absolutely. I don't think I've seen a bad Death Triangle match, tag or trio. I think it's impossible. I think the lads have been banner carrying members of the trios division. When all that went down with the Bucks and Omega, they just chucked the belts on the back and off they went. Pac, Fenix, and Penta, just beautiful, like almost symbiotic wrestling from those three. So I think I would have put them at 3.
No, I don't. Looking at who the top 3 are, and we'll get to that in a second.
Maybe
I think 4 might be an all right position for them. You could argue even that the teams like RK Bro and FWC all exist in the same level as Death Triangle, but I can't really argue with the placing here. The Lucha Bros began the evaluation period as tag team champions, that great little feud with FTR, before they lost the belts to Jurassic Express, the match in which Fenix was unfortunately injured. However, with Pac, they then became the, not inaugural, but as you mentioned, the second ever Trios champions in AEW, because of the suspension to the Elite, and now they are going on to have this best of 7 series, which I'm worried they're gonna lose.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. I do. Yeah.
Like the Bucks and Omega have that brave fight from underneath.
Not to get too Kevin Keegan about it, but I would love it if Death Triangle beat them. I would love it. Come on, Death Triangle.
Come on, the Triangle. I'd be all right with that. Geordie Pac bringing it home.
Not just because Pac's from Newcastle, I was about to say, but
it
also
does help
a little bit.
It also helps that he's one of the best wrestlers on the planet as well.
More salient, probably. Number 3, Mark and Jay Briscoe, the Briscoes. They've been around for decades now. They won the Ring of Honor Tag Team titles at Final Battle 2021, which sparked a year that has been a career resurgence for the Briscoes. They were always good in the ring, but this was like a banner year for them.
I think it did them good to get away from Ring of Honor, because they were just Ring of Honor exclusive
Yes.
exclusive for a long time. So the end of Ring of Honor allow them to really spread their wings, and as you're going to tell us, just do so much and make so much magic in so many places.
In the interim between the end of Ring of Honor at Final Battle and then Tony Khan buying the promotion, and that all started up again around WrestleMania weekend, they went on to enjoy success in various different promotions. They won gold in Impact Wrestling, in GCW, where they were multiple time tag team champions, and they even won the Crockett Cup in the NWA as well. However, they will probably be most remembered for this year their series of matches, their 2 matches against FTR. They lost both of them, but that's not really the point here, is it? It was the fact that those matches were both incredible. I slightly prefer the first one, but that I don't mean to dampen the impact of the second one either. They were really good matches.
They're brilliant, and I'm intrigued for going into next year, like, because Ring of Honor desperately now needs to go and be its own thing. Desperately needs to, because at the moment it's just sort of like a limpet hanging onto AEW, and it's creating so many issues. Once that happens, and once we get to see more of the Briscoes within Ring of Honor on a consistent basis, that's going to be exciting.
Yes,
that's going to be exciting.
The top 2 is very interesting, and a case could easily be made for either of these next 2 teams to be number 1. But number 2 is Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, FTR. They have topped this list before in the past. I think in 2020 was the last time they did. But this time around, they are only number 2, which shouldn't have said that like it's a bad thing.
Only number 2?
They've had a rubbish year. No, they've had an amazing year. They had those 2 matches that I've just mentioned with the Briscoes. They were also, they are still simultaneous holders. Do they hold all these still? I think so. Of the Ring of Honor, IWGP, that's New Japan's, and the AAA tag team titles. They've had incredible matches with all kinds of tag teams this year, specifically the Briscoes and the match that Tom mentioned earlier with Aussie Open. They've also got a revenge victory over the Young Bucks, which left a sour taste in my mouth because it was just on TV, and the Bucks beat them in front of the world on pay-per-view. It's fine.
They're another team that, like, with the Briscoes, how I mentioned that Ring of Honor and AEW desperately need to be pulled apart now, because the one thing that we've heard a lot of from FTR when we've done these news videos for you here at Cultaholic is a bit of a malaise and a frustration with not getting on TV enough, and the frustration of having the number 2 tag team in the world, according to Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And like, you really have to find somewhere to squeeze them in.
Yeah, and it doesn't really make sense. It's a frustration that they verbalized as well. Was it Dax Harwood walking around the ring at New Japan saying like, "We're here, Tony, what are you doing?"
Yeah, that's it. But and every time they've got in the ring, they've been money. I wouldn't be shocked as well if should the opportunity present itself, should Hunter give them a call.
I know.
I feel like they're a team that I think he would probably want in his ranks again.
And it would be quite interesting to see what would happen under Triple H rather than under Vince McMahon. But that means, as you may have predicted, that number 1 this year in the PWI Tag Team 100 is Jimmy and Jay, the Usos.
First time in the history of the PWI Tag Countdown that a WWE team has been number 1.
Oh, really? Wow. It's hard to argue. You could make an argument for FTR, but the Usos also, I think, are a prime candidate for number 1 here, and it's kind of hard to argue against them. Not only have they had good matches with the likes of the Street Profits and the Brawling Brutes, but I think the important thing to remember here is that even though they've won the tag belts and they've unified the Raw and SmackDown ones and they've broken records, everything that's helped their case here, by the way, but wrestling's about storytelling, and the Usos have been part of arguably the best story in wrestling right now, and that's the Bloodline saga that's going on at the moment.
Arguably, like pretty close to the center of it as well, with Jey Uso and Sami Zayn, and they're bickering back and forth. And even before that, I know this isn't counted in sort of the time frame for PWI, but the story of how they aligned with Roman Reigns was even magnificently told during a time where storytelling wasn't as big a focus.
Yeah,
we had a great story of how Jey Uso kind of eventually sort of took bowed his head for Roman Reigns, and how we got here. And this is it with PWI. The way they judge it is on, as I said, multiple things, including the in-ring ability, including the competitors, including the impact within the sport or the promotion. But you look at all of that, they've faced every tag team and had a great to excellent match. They have been part of, as you say, the biggest story in wrestling right now, with Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, and all of that stuff. And when they're not doing that, they're having just throwaway 5-star opening match bangers with the New Day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's everything they touch has been great this year.
Yes, it is hard to argue against them. I think you could make a case for FTR, but if you combined the kind of the indie freedom of FTR in putting their matches together and the Triple H-led WWE storytelling of the Bloodline and the Usos and everything, then you'd have like an undisputed number one. But I can't be, despite being a huge FTR fan, I can't be angry at the Usos being
I
number
actually
one,
feel like that the Usos fit that better, and I don't think that's any wrongdoing with FTR. I think if FTR had a consistent, compelling bit of storyline work throughout the year, I think the argument could have been made for being number one.
Yeah.
But that's a real missing factor, and I think that's a failing that isn't with FTR,
No,
which
it's
is
not,
such
it's
a
not,
shame,
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? It's not down to anything they've done. It's just the fact that the Usos have been a major part of this continuous story throughout the year, and that's a major factor in how Pro Wrestling Illustrated put these together.
Well, fair enough. Once again, as Tom mentioned earlier on, do go and check out the latest edition of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. It's always a wonderful magazine, but the list...
It's like $4 for the digital version. Like you'd buy like a macchiato for that, wouldn't you? You'd buy a posh coffee for that. But you'd buy PWI.
But the list editions, they always knock it out of the park. This has been a wonderful edition of the tag. I feel like this has been the one where the tag team list has been treated with the most importance. It's now been expanded to 100.
Yeah.
So do definitely check it out. And thank you for watching this video as well. Thank you, Tom, for joining me.
Tag team, innit?
Big bloody tag. We should be on the PWI 500.
Get us in that list.
Not the 500, the 100. That's the one.
Warren, Kristen, get us in that list.
Yes. Thank you very much for watching. Do leave your thoughts and have a nice debate in the comments below, because I'd be interested to see what people think of these various placings here. That's half the point of these lists, really. And check out all the other content on this channel. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.
He did it! He did the line! He did the line! I'm gonna go get a bus.
Hit me with your pen.